Good morning and welcome everybody that is joining us today for this online workshop. There are still some people connecting, but we will start slowly. On this workshop today that is being organized together by two Horizon Europe projects, Stand4EU and HSbooster. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Maitane Olavarria. I'm the Secretary General of Small Business Standards. That is an association representing SMEs in standardization, and I'm involved in both projects. And it is today really a pleasure for me to moderate today's session. So just a few words, we will have a full introduction later, but just a few words about the two projects that are co-organizing the event today, Stand4EU and HSbooster. So these two projects have a common aim, that is to bring closer together research, innovation, and standardization. As we know, standards play a crucial role in valorizing research results and enhancing the market uptake of technological innovations. However, we also know that challenges exist and that it is not so easy for SMEs, research organizations, and other actors that are involved in European research projects to contribute to standardization. So the aim of today is to discuss some of the best practices identified by Stand4EU, and also the experience of HSbooster in assisting research projects to address some of these challenges in order to be able to contribute to standardization. We want to have your feedback and to be able to validate with you these practices and also explore maybe new needs or maybe new strategies we didn't think about that can help to close also this gap between research, innovation, and standardization. If we look at the program that probably you have seen when you registered today, we will first start with a presentation from Gergely Tardos from the European Commission that will also provide us a bit of context in relation to European policies on knowledge valorization. And also after that, we will have an overview of both projects before we jump into a panel discussion for which we have really a quite nice group of panelists with different backgrounds and experiences. I would like to highlight, first of all, that this session will be recorded. Please also note that the recording and the slides will be available in the event webpage in the next days. And we also want to encourage you to be active and to pose your questions, use the chat. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A panel for any questions you might have. We have also foreseen a couple of polls that will allow us to get your feedback during the event. And precisely to break a bit the ice, I would like to start by launching a poll that can also help us to have a bit more of idea of what is your knowledge and background regarding standardization. So normally you should see a poll now that is asking you with which standards developing organizations, are you familiar with? So you have different standards developing organizations. I see people are replying to the poll. Most of you are familiar with standards developing organization, but I also see there are some of you that might not have so much knowledge or are not so familiar with them. I will give you a couple seconds more before I end the poll, and also our panelists can have a look at the results. So I will end the poll now, and you can see the results. So as you can see, and I can see a lot of you are familiar with ISO, with IEC, IEEE. So quite a lot of you are familiar with standard developing organizations, but there are also some of you that are not so familiar. So this is useful for us also to take this into account when we go through the discussions of today. So now let me hand over to Gergely Tardos, Policy Officer at the Directorate General for Research and Innovation at the European Commission, who will tell us a bit more about the context regarding EU valorization policies and also the code of practice on standardization.
Thank you very much, Maitane. Good morning to everyone. I would also like to welcome the participants of the HSbooster and Stand4EU webinar. Indeed, my name is Gary Tardos, and I'm a policy officer in DG Research and Innovation of the European Commission. I work in the unit responsible for valorization and IPR. If I may have the next slide. So I understand that most of you are quite familiar with standardization, but maybe I would just say a couple of words about the rationale against which we have been building our policies for standardization as a knowledge valorization channel. Because this is quite evident from the literature and empirical evidence that there are many benefits for organizations and individuals involved in R&I if they engage in international and European standards development in innovative, new and emerging technology areas. First, as you can see on this diagram, standards help build customers' trust and confidence in new technologies. And through this, they enable the accelerated mass market diffusion and thereby the adoption of related products and services. I could also say that standards help the bridge between research and global markets by enabling an efficient and effective knowledge and technology transfer. And of course, this is very important when we're talking about the given market's position in global competitiveness. So if I may have the next slide. So against this background, after 2 years of work within the Commission, the Council of Ministers adopted the so-called guiding principles for knowledge valorization. This happened in December, just exactly a year ago, which gives a very, very strong endorsement to the whole EU in terms of what to do in R&I valorization. The idea basically is, against the background in terms of standardization, but also in the context of other knowledge valorization channels, that what the Commission and other entities at EU level could do in order to valorize the results of excellent research projects and to define and develop different channels for knowledge valorization. And the ultimate features are basically two things. First, to broaden the scope of entities to cover the entire R&I ecosystem, and to motivate and require all stakeholders to hop on the train and implement new approaches to knowledge valorization, including standardization. And these guiding principles, as you see it on the slide, are being implemented by a set of codes of practice. The goal is to develop one code per each knowledge valorization channel. We have already the Commission already adopted 2 codes of practice in March 2023, one in relation to intellectual asset management and the other one on standardization. This is the first time when standardization is introduced to a European research area policy document or set of documents. The next, please. And there is another inertia, political determination against which or which backs our policy work, which is the standardization strategy, which was also adopted last year. And this strategy made a this symbiotic connection between R&I and standardization very explicit. So the strategy very clearly indicates that inside the union, there is a new wave focusing on standardization and as means of knowledge valorization. And in this strategy, there is a chapter on cutting edge innovation. There's a chapter on cutting edge innovation that fosters timely standards. And the focus of this chapter is on one hand, the strengthening the link between standardization and R&I through the European research area, and that's a wider focus. And then there is a more narrow, more specific focus on Horizon Europe, how Horizon Europe can bridge the gap between R&I results and market uptake of R&I results. And of course, from this aspect, for instance, the activities of the standardization booster is very easily derivable. So if I have the next one, please, and I would talk here mainly what this code of practice is about, which is the overarching guidance document for the entire ecosystem in the interface of R&I standardization, with an overall objective to contribute to the successful synchronization and systemic integration of R&I and standardization. With other words, this document gives guidance to researchers and innovators exploring the use of standards as a powerful and effective knowledge valorization channel. It basically identifies good practices for researchers and innovators dealing with standardization in the course of R&I projects. What the method or the basis for the analysis was is a big sample of 2,200 Horizon 2020 projects representing a large variety of fields, domains. And the aim with the analysis of these 2,200 projects, which indicated some activities around standardization, was to identify good patterns, replicable patterns, which then could serve as a basis for a set of recommendations on how future projects of beneficiaries of projects could best valorize project results through standardization. And basically, so we identify the common success factors of projects, and then the recommendations are clustered in 3 groups. First at institutional, second project partner level, and then post level. Let me just give you a very short summary of the recommendations. I know the time runs. At institutional level, basically, we are talking about the code of practice talks about developing a standardization policy by all institutions in the ecosystem, which includes needs assessment, stakeholder management, then career development plans, which is recommended to be recognition-based, and contribution to standardization should be recognized. And then education and training on standardization, including TIA's TOF, and creating, putting standardization as a subject in the curriculum or curricula. And then there's the recommendation on the linkages between technology transfer offices and standardization. Again, strong focus on capacity building, involvement of the standard development organizations. And then finally, the adequate indicator setting, including outcome impact, including also qualitative and quantitative indicators to be developed in collaborations with other universities, if we're talking about higher education institutions, or with other scientific data repositories such as the European Open Science Cloud. Now, at project level, very importantly, do things upfront, already at the application phase, landscape analysis, including mapping for existing or new standardization. It's important that we don't want to impose on anyone to do standardization if it's not necessary. Standardization is a tool and not an objective. So therefore, gaps in license is very, very important. And the existing standards can serve as benchmarking for new methodologies. It's important that the project partners have a common understanding and strategy position of standardization within the consortium. If we're talking about a collaborative projects, of course, because standardization has, of course, relevance when we talk about mono-beneficiary projects, such as mainly funded by the European Innovation Council. So involving partners with standardization experiences, potentially standard development organizations within the project, of course, seems very, very relevant. And then finally, as there is a quite serious problem in terms of the diverging timeline between standardization and the project cycle, it's very important to find a solution for this. And therefore, the code is recommending the creation of clusters, the strings of projects to bridge this problem. And finally, the third box is on the policy recommendations, where there's a boost towards member states to use standardization as means of knowledge valorization. To specifically, there's a third specific recommendation with a focus on the needs of startups and SMEs in R&I projects in relation to standardization. And there is a recommendation for standard development organizations to develop or improve or enlarge their service portfolios to align with R&I activities. And finally, to use more member states' national support in relation to standardization and R&I valorization tool. The next slide is showing to you just links of the aforementioned documents, including the guiding principles and the code of practice, and also a fact sheet if you want to have just a quick snapshot of what I have been talking about. And then the last slide, and I would really like to talk just for 1 or 2 minutes about another action which has a very important may have, and we hope will have, policy implications, is our new actions on the European Standardization Panel Survey, which is very complementary to the aforementioned Code of Practice. Because what we think that while the Code of Practice is mainly focusing on the supply side, so meaning by that is how can R&I results be linked to existing standards and how they can contribute to new ones, we need to also understand the full picture. And for that, we also like to understand the industry's interest in this regard. So by this initiative of the European Standardization Panel Survey, we would like to better understand the current activities and future trends of companies as for R&I-based standardization, and by gathering this intelligence could serve for us as a valuable input for new policy actions. So this survey at European level serves, as I just mentioned, as a complementary action to the Code of Practice, and it also serves as a sort of tool to raise awareness for businesses which have not yet used formal standards or have been active in standards. So the survey was launched on the World Standards Day on the 14th of October, and it's open for a relatively long time until the end of the year. So therefore, this is the last moment, and I would come here with a plea to share the link within your networks. It is very important that we reach a good representativity of respondents, and to have the best quality of evidence for future policy making actions. So the final report on the basis of the study report is expected in the first quarter of 2024. So with these policy framing and some 2 concrete actions we've been carrying out in the last 2 years, I would like to stop here, and thanks a lot for your attention. I'm giving back the floor to Itali. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gergely for giving us this context in which we also need to understand where the projects are coming from. So this is quite useful. And I would like to join to your plea and ask our audience to participate in the European Standardization Panel. We will share the link in the chat as well with the participants, and of course your slides will be available and the link is also there. I know you need to leave, unfortunately, because you have another commitment, so thank you very much for your presentation. And I think I will then go next to directly to our next speaker, Eugene Pei from Brunel University in London. He is one of the partners in the Stand4EU project, and he will give us an overview of the project and also highlight some of the top best practices for standardization that have been identified in the project. Eugene? We don't hear you, Eugene.
Yes, I'm just starting a screen share at the moment, so you should be able to see the screen. Well, very good morning to all of you. I'm just really pleased to have the opportunity to share with you some of the results about best practices for standardization, in particular for the Stand4EU project. But just before I go ahead with that, just want to talk about more about the Stand4EU project on its own. So this was a 24 months project, which was part of the Horizon Cluster 4 2021 call. And the full title was Boosting the Exploitation of Standardization Inputs from European Projects. And the kickoff meeting was about a year ago. So we are already close to more than halfway point of the project. And that's why we are so passionate to share for the last couple of months. So let me move on to the next slide. Right, just give me a second for that. I think there was a little bit of issue with my technical computer. Let's try and take a look. Right, so let me move on to the next slide. So here in this slide, we can see the participants involved in Stand4EU project, of which there were 6 partners. So the European Welding Federation was the key coordinator. And we also have partners including Fraunhofer, Chalmers University, Siemens, Small Business Standards, which Maitana is part of, and Brunel University, which myself I'm from. So we talk about the motivation of why we are doing the Stand4EU project. And really, this is based on a collective experience from the partners' past and current European projects, for example, from Integrad, from Amable, from Ingenium, from LASIT. And we found that there are some challenges with regards to standards, for example, the culture of standards. There might be potentially lack of openness in some instances, not always, but in some instances, and also a greater need for more fuller transparency in a process. Much better integration is needed, in particular with academia. We also need to find ways to achieve collective consensus among a diverse group of stakeholders, and in some instances to improve the way we do things for agility purposes. So based on that, we decided to form a consortium, and we decided to also target 4 main domains. You could see the 4 pillars, of which the 4 domains include additive manufacturing or 3D printing, welding, smart manufacturing, and also circular economy. But we wanted to also look into the cross-cutting measures, in particular about humans in industry and social sustainability, environmental sustainability, and also about agility and resilience. And within Stand4EU, we wanted to ensure that we engage with policymakers, industries, and universities. And this is why it's so important to hold workshops such as what we are doing today. So in terms of our approach, we had 4 main phases. So at this point, we are currently moving across from phase 2 to phase 3. And today's workshop is part of the validation. We have actually 4 validation workshops, of which this was the second validation. And we're also obviously making developments for the Stand4EU interface, which is already actually ongoing. And you're actually able to access the interface from Stand4EU. So do check out our webpage. So talking about the trend workshops, we held 4 trend workshops in the past few months, and this was meant to gather the best practices. So we had a variety of best practices from each of the 4 workshops. So for example, in the first workshop, we were talking about best practices collected from surveys and interviews. So the surveys and interviews gave us a huge wealth of data, and also best practices, collective best practices, followed by the second workshop, in particular about management and engagement of standards. And the third one more about welding and additive manufacturing standards. And the fourth workshop focused much more about best practices for circular economy. So with these 4 workshops, the best practices were then condensed into a much more manageable data set. For example, in the first workshop, these are the 8 main data sets that we collected about surveys and interviews. For example, some of the respondents suggested that, for example, not in a particular order, maybe by pursuing a collaborative development of standards, this could be seen as a best practice. Or for example, by trying to create committees, right? Making sure that committees work much more effectively. This is also seen to be a good best practice. So the second trend workshop, more particular about management and engagement of standards. We look into more about the practicalities of operation. So the operationalization of standards, for example, best practice could be about streamlining the process, right? In particular to fasten, to expedite the timeline, to try and reduce the number of steps if possible. Or maybe trying to look into better effective communication between the TC management, the technical committees, and also with members of the project. But better communication was also seen to be a good practice. Other respondents also, for example, suggested the need for a better centralized database, some sort of like a portal, which we know in ISO, for example, already has a portal, a database. But in some instances, it's also about signposting people, getting them to familiarize with how to actually use the data, make meaning from the data, so as to effectively manage the standardization effort. So we have, again, another data set from the second workshop. And in the third workshop, we look more particular about sector needs for welding and additive manufacturing. So some of the best practices could be, for example, for welding, to try and make sure that the standards for welding are aligned to the key regulations and also standards requirements. For example, in ISO 3834, or maybe to try and ensure a much more robust review mechanism. We know standards are reviewed once every 4 to 5 years, but also make sure that in the review process, it's robust, it's also periodically assessed to ensure the relevance of the standard. Also in terms of providing timely updates, making sure that they are released in an appropriate time. Some standards can be very complicated, so about the timing of release, and also following stringent quality of controls. So these were some of the 8 best practices that we captured from welding and additive manufacturing. And lastly, from the fourth workshop, we collected and condensed another 8 best practices. So for circular economy, for example, we look into aspects about trying to adopt a much more inclusive approach, trying to incorporate innovation and sustainability in the process, because circular economy is quite a wide and diverse cross-cutting theme. Also, in best practices for circular economy, we look into, for example, seeking more funding, because this is quite a new area that has emerged in the last 3 to 5 years about circular economy. People have suggested to have much more funding, for example, funding streams through digital innovation hubs, and also from Horizon and Europe projects as well. And also to increase awareness and accessibility of standards is sometimes important, not just to create standards, but also making sure where can people find the standards, can they access it, Are they aware about a particular standard to help them? So in total, from the 4 trend workshops, we collected 32 best practices. Now, with such a diverse number of best practices being condensed to 32 best practices, what we really want to do today is to further engage, review participants to try and narrow this down, and which is why we have decided to create an interactive poll. So I will invite my colleague, Angelique, to try and talk more about the interactive poll.
Great, thank you, Eugene. Next slide, please, if possible. Thank you, perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Angelique Martinu. I'm a doctoral researcher at Brunel University, and I work with Eugene for Stand4EU. So we've designed a very quick activity for you. It should only take 30 seconds, and I think my colleague as well should be able to put the link in the chat for your convenience, but we also have a QR code if you want to use that. Thank you very much, Janet. So yeah, we would appreciate your engagement with this, because the ranking poll will be, and the results will be fed into the panel conversation as well. So the purpose of this exercise is to figure out and find out what practices you find meaningful, beneficial through your experience, and we've distilled and distinguished these 12 best practices from the entirety of our data set and results. These came from internal conversations and also with HSbooster. And just to briefly mention for housekeeping, if you have any issues with Slido, please let us know. It should be easy to navigate. I think you just have to click through and drag along the 12 practices. And also, please don't forget to scroll down your page and submit your results. We'll give this about 3 minutes. We should be able to screen share as well the process of the poll. So we'll give this around 3 minutes, but any concerns, please let us know, and then we'll just move on to the next speaker.
Yes, thank you, Angelique. As you mentioned, the poll is still running, even though we are moving to the next speaker. So we really want is an opportunity to give us feedback about what you think are the most important best practices. And as was mentioned, we will discuss this as well during the panel. So while the poll is still going, I think I will go to our next speaker, Nick Ferguson, that is the coordinator of HSbooster, that basically is a project that is helping research projects to navigate, I would say, the often complex world of standardization by providing concrete services to address concrete standardization challenges, and that will be also a pilot for a future booster helping research projects to do this. So Nick, tell us a bit more about this, and maybe you want also to make some links with some of the best practices you heard.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's exactly what I'd like to do. So thank you, Matan and Gerge, and also thank you, Eugene, as well, because some of the best practices that you've mentioned are very relevant to the standardization boosters. So you'll have seen in Gerge's presentation, he mentioned the booster, which a lot of you will have heard of, but in short, it's basically we are carrying out a pilot project. So we're piloting an eventual standardization booster. So a booster is a support service provided by the Commission, which focuses on different aspects. So our booster focuses on improving the way that improving knowledge and understanding and raising awareness of standardization to consortia of EU projects, and in particular beneficiaries of these projects. So it's very interesting to hear the best practices which the Stand4EU project have identified, and they really reflect a lot of the activities which the booster is trying to implement in its lifetime. So firstly, it's very interesting to hear about bridging the gap and improving effective communication between projects and standardization, looking at funding and resources for standardization, and creating a community of experts who can collaborate with projects. And finally, increasing expertise through education and training. And these are things which I'd like to touch on in the presentation. These are things which the booster looks to address. And later on in the panel, we'll be joined by representatives from our consortium and our expert advisory group as well as projects which have benefited from the services. So first of all, bridging the gap. The main, shall we say, flagship service which the booster provides is mentoring. So mentoring between standardization experts and EU projects. So different EU projects run on different lifetimes. They have different needs. They have different understanding and expertise of standardization within their consortia. And basically, we match up project to experts across all of the research fields in Horizon Europe and in Horizon 2020, and also in the Digital Europe program. So projects can apply, and they can be. We try to match them up with an expert who has knowledge of that field for the project. We have 180 experts currently recruited, and they are contracted to deliver mentoring services to projects. So it really depends on what the project needs. Maybe it's an analysis of where they are in the standards landscape. Maybe they want to have a first step and understand, what direction they should take, or maybe it's something more practical and they're more mature in their understanding of standardization, are ready to contribute directly to a technical committee, for example. So there's lots of different needs the project have, and the services, the consultancy services, are very, very tailor-made to deal with anything as much as we can. The services run over a period of up to 3 months, and this includes meetings, one-to-one meetings with the expert, where they basically provide you with, or you provide them with an overview of what you would like to do, and then they give you advice and guidance on how to address standardization, maybe with practical steps, and also to introduce you to the standardization landscape. On top of this, in the last slide, I also had some other activities which we run, including webinars and workshop series as well for clusters of projects. And these are really important in terms of trying to address as many projects as possible and to raise awareness of standardization requirements and needs in different research areas. A very practical way. So one of the best practices which Eugene mentioned was to increase funding and resources for standardization. And a very practical thing which the booster offers is funding. So maybe a project has the need to maybe a beneficiary to enroll in a standards development organization or a national body so that they can contribute to a meeting, for example, or maybe they would like to purchase a standard, for example, or even for projects who have quite a good idea of where they want their results and how to valorize their results, to develop a SEN workshop agreement, which comes with an expense as well. So we do have budget available for projects to do these things. And then in the panel later, we'll hear from 3 projects who have either benefited from accessing this budget, in the case of Ash Cycle and NanoMe Commons, who are looking to take forward and develop SEN workshop agreements, or also a project which has received guidance on which technical committees to address and to join, in the case of AFC Hydro. So they're interesting insights we'd like to hear later in the panel. I have a slide on how projects can apply, but it's quick and it's easy. And the open calls are available, so these services will be available until June next year, and will continue running until the end of our project, which is in September. Another way in which the project tries to address needs within standardization is to increase expertise and education. And we have Ivana Mijatovic from the University of Belgrade, who will be talking about the importance of raising or increasing expertise in standardization, and based on different levels of knowledge of standardization and different needs, from practical, so understanding how to behave, how to take the first steps towards engagement in standardization, to actual best practices of projects who have really taken on board the importance of standardization and valorizing their results. So Ivana will be able to touch on this later. And also, maybe you're sitting here thinking, well, how do I start? Where do I start? Because a lot of projects we meet, there's not a lot of knowledge on standardization. It's an objective they may have, or it's something which maybe the reviewers have suggested, but how do they take this first step? And we've just launched a new online resource, a new tool, standards orientation tool, which was, this activity was led by Dansk and then Sinet, who's also on the panel later, can maybe mention this. And it's basically an online resource to help you as a project to understand the first steps that you can take. What should you do? What direction you should do? And we were helped in this by René Lindner, who was one of our members of our expert advisory group as well. So this is an important resource which is available to projects. And I'd like to just close on a quote. Why don't we have a look at one of the projects which has benefited from the services? And it's an example of a project who's, benefited from understanding what strategic what position the project should take in terms of standardization, and understanding the landscape around them. And thanks to that set the project forward in establishing a timeline and a set of actions which they're now taking forward through the project lifetime. The very end of my slides, I've got a slide on each of the projects who we'll be hearing from later, which you can download later on. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll hand back to you, Matan, and looking forward to an exciting panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick, for this overview. There was a question, but it has already been answered in the Q&A, but by another of the HSbooster partners. So I think we can now move to basically our panel, so the discussion. So in the panel discussion, as it was mentioned, we would like to focus on the best practices that have been mentioned, and also how research projects can play a bigger role in standardization. I mentioned it earlier and I mention it again. We are interested in getting your feedback, so I would like to encourage you to write your questions, and we will dedicate time in the panel to answer your questions. So please put your questions in the Q&A panel if you have any, or don't hesitate as well to put any comments you might have in the chat as well. So basically, I would like to start the panel by introducing our panelists. I think we have put together quite a nice group of experts. Basically, these people are experts that either have experience in working in standardization, they are involved in standardization, or through their projects they have, as Nick said, benefited from services offered by the HSbooster. So they have some experience in trying to get their inputs into a standardization. So let me introduce our panelists. First of all, we have Lindsay Frost, who is a Chief Standardization Engineer at NEC Europe. He has over 20 years of experience in technology development and standardization within ETSI in different positions as well. And And HSI, as you might know, is one of the European standards organizations. So welcome, Lindsay. We also have with us Ivana Mijatovic, who is a professor at the University of Belgrade and is an expert in standardization education. And as we heard from Nick, she's leading the HSbooster standardization training academy. So we couldn't have a best person to tell us about the challenges regarding education in standardization and training. Our next panelist is Georgios Konstantopoulos. He's a chemical engineer working at the National Technical University of Athens, and he's involved in the coordination of one of the projects that was already mentioned by Nick, NanoMe Commons, a Horizon 2020 project related to harmonization and standardization of nanomechanical testing and data exchange protocols. I hope I said that well, Georgios. We also have Signe Annette Bog, that is a senior project manager at Danish Standards, that is the national standards body in Denmark. And she brings, of course, to the discussion more than a decade of experience in integrated research and innovation in standardization. She's also a partner in HSbooster. We have as well with us Vilma Dukman, that is also another person involved in one of the projects that have benefited from HSbooster support, Ash Cycle, and she is the head of the laboratory for cements, mortars, and ceramics at the Slovenian National Institute for Building and Civil Engineering. And finally, last but not least, Morten Kielsen, I hope I said it well, that works at Flow Design Bureau Norway. That is a company specializing in services and products for hydropower units. And he has also been involved in another Horizon 2020 project, AFC for hydro. So I would like to welcome you all. Thank you all of you for being here and contributing to the discussion. I would like to start by maybe asking Eugene to show us what are the main outcomes of this ranking exercise that you have all contributed to, and maybe discuss this with our panelists. So I hope this can be projected, shared with us.
Yes, I'd like my colleague Jennifer to share the screen if that's possible. Thank you. So you should be able to see the screen share about the results.
I don't see them very big, but it's okay. So I see that I would like to start maybe with Ivana. I would like to start with you, because I also see that making standardization part of academic curricula is one of the top 3 best practices that have been highlighted in the ranking, and also is one of the best practices of Stand4EU, but is also one of the issues you are trying to tackle through the HSbooster Training Academy. So I was wondering whether you can maybe let us know or tell us a bit more, what do you think is the best approach to use in relation to standardization training programs? And also we heard from Nick before, and it's true that different projects are in different stages. Different projects are dealing with different sectors, different areas. How do you make sure these programs and the work you are doing fit these different levels of expertise and sectors?
Thank you, Martijn. Good morning, still is morning to everyone. First of all, I think that the first, when we talk about methodology or how to train, how to establish training programs, even on in some project or in academia, I would like to pose a question. So, to whom are you provide that training services? So I think that first thing that we should have on our mind is related to target audience. So my experience based on HSbooster is related to a point that we had to set, and we had very defined target audience, dear researchers. But on the other side, our target audience are not the same. As you saw in a presentation of HSbooster, training or raising awareness. Look at the first rank, raising awareness about standard. That is what is a base of service of HSbooster. That is you need some kind of training everywhere, not only in academia. So basically, when we discuss about what are the, let's say, the key part of establishing one training, I will say first, carefully identify target audience. Another is understand needs and their motives. And then be very close to the target audience. And that is something that we did and we are still doing in HSbooster. We are very close to our target audience through services, and a lot of army of people are engaged as an experts or as a partners in research consortia. But my answer how to achieve the best practice, one or maybe three, is related to identify very well target audience and customize everything to that target audience, even the specific service. So basically, I think that might be my answer on your question.
Thank you, Ivana. I think I totally agree with you, especially with my experience when we talk about SMEs, they want to have concrete cases of how does this impact my business and my profits at the end of the day. So indeed, you need to maybe target a bit your message depending on the audience. I totally agree. We can maybe move to Lindsay. You have a long experience in standardization, and I wanted to know a bit more about your views of what you think are the main challenges you have seen when trying to align research outputs with standardization processes. And also, you know, you have now the results of the ranking. So do you think the top best practices that are now on the top of the ranking are the main ones that can help to address these challenges that you might have found during your career regarding standardization and research?
Thank you very much. I would like to say that standardization is often taken to be putting ideas on paper and then the best ideas will win. But actually standardization is all about communication, and that's where we have our biggest challenge. So I really agree that number one item, increasing awareness and visibility, is crucial. And we've got so many very good people in research and they don't want to know about standards. I've worked with young people the last 10 years and it's not part of their career path. It doesn't help them to get another interesting position. So in that sense, awareness of the benefit of standards is really lacking to the research community. And on the other side, the standards people, they like new ideas, but those ideas, let me say, they want them packaged into a direction that will fit easily into what they're already doing. If the standards people have to sidetrack and do something completely different, well, look at quantum technologies. What happens? They form a whole new group because you can't easily pack it into one of the existing ones. So the bottom line for me is we've got to continue improving our communication, like in these webinars. People sometimes say, webinars, okay, I can leave it. I look at it offline in 6 months. But this time that we invest is absolutely essential so that we don't miss out on what other people are already doing. So I'll keep it short and leave it there, and I look forward to the rest of this webinar. Thanks.
Thank you, Lindsay. So I take transparency communication is key. And I agree with you. You know, in the standards technical committees, we are also used, and the way you write the standards is very particular. So sometimes you need to package it. If we move now more to the people in our panel that have some experience with projects, and maybe we can ask Georgios to start with, to maybe give us a bit more insights from your practical experience in research projects and how you approach, you know, standardization in the research project you are involved in. What are the challenges you have faced in aligning your research project with the standardization requirements? How have you dealt with standardization basically in general in your project, and how you overcame these challenges?
First of all, greetings to everyone. Thank you for having me in this nice panel. Related to the project, we are involved in coordination and on a commons project. We are considering the importance of standardization, especially in terms of topics for research collaboration, because in our research project, we are fostering the interoperability in the materials characterization domain, and this is going to support manufacturing. So as we develop the protocols for data exchange procedures, and we establish ontologies for documenting metadata from modeling, characterization, and other activities supporting manufacturing, the goal is to provide a common language that facilitates the interoperability, seamless communication, and data sharing amongst researchers, institutions, and industry stakeholders. So the standardization can be a catalyst for us because it can accelerate the pace of innovation and can ensure the diverse research efforts that can easily build upon each other. So we expand the scope of the project, so the scope of research. And one of key challenges that we encountered was the heterogeneity in data formats, terminologies, the freedom that each researcher expresses. When you build data exchange procedures, this is important to have a uniform way to express, and achieving consensus on standardized exchange procedures and building comprehensive ontologies presenting formidable challenges. So initially, we started triggering a pre-standardization process within the project, because we collaborate with 5 different industries from different domains, so that we can address the flexibility without mitigating the universality of the data exchange procedures. But we need, in order to make a better impact of our standardization activities, to open to a wider expert stakeholder group to address these challenges and adopt a collaborative approach, which can be favored from CSA actions like the standardization booster, which can bring the community, can bring the expertise, the consultation, in order to engage the community and have a result with a wider impact. Yes, so I believe that in this feedback loop, it is the best case in order to address standardization challenges. And of course, it is excellent to have started the collaboration recently with the standardization booster.
If I can go a bit more in depth, Georgios, I understand that the HSbooster helped you to basically develop a standardization deliverable, what we call a SEN workshop agreement. So just for those that might not be so familiar with it, is basically standards might take up to 3 years to be developed or even more. And the SEN workshop agreement is a deliverable that can be done, let's say, in a bit more flexible framework and can be done quicker. There are also other deliverables in other standards bodies like a PAS, publicly available specification, etc. So how was your experience with this, and how did the HSbooster help you to do this? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, first of all, this standardization activity is currently, we are handling the administrative aspects, and will start in January 2024. This will be a 10-month series of standardization meetings. It will be 12 in total, and with Standardization Booster, we had also the financial support. So we co-funded, we shared not only just the resources, but also, the responsibility, because Standardization Booster has experience in standardization. We are relatively new to this kind of topics, and of course, having the expertise to guide us in the process is very important, but also finances is a key enabler. I think also it is one of the poll outcomes. It is the second rank identified in the funding sources, because this can be a limitation for standardization. But beyond that, with this agreement and documenting this agreement in the process, which will start, has another benefit of accessibility, which is point number one, because the CN workshop agreements are open to the public, so everyone can download this form of standard. So making the impact even better, because already we see that with this collaboration with Standardization Booster, our project is possible to achieve the first two more important points identified by the participants today.
Thank you very much, Georgios. I will move now to Morten, who has also benefited from the support of HSbooster services. So from your experience, you see now the ranking. Georgios was also talking about funding. I have to say that funding comes up in many contexts. There are also there are several resources to get funding, but these are not well known. But there are also, other best practices that appear here in the ranking. So what are the most important standardization best practices that you think are the most critical for the success of research projects, taking into account your experience?
Yes, well, thank you. I should start with just saying that, in my regular work, we rely quite a bit on standards. So we are used to using standards. But of course, in our EU project, it's many ways, I would say, I also has this increasing awareness as top one in a way, because, and my epiphany, or when I actually saw the light with standards, was more when I contacted the national committee, because then I got really good feedback from the the employees of Standards Norway, and they gave me some really good tips and tricks, and I got also engaged with national committees in my field. So that was my when I became really aware of this process. And then I also would like to stress, it was mentioned by maybe Nick, that of course we submitted a proposal where we suggested to exploit our finding in the project through a standard. of course, at that point, it would, when I think back, it would help if this point one was I was aware of much more aware of standards, but also this point four, if there was this the process were available, so I could you know, avoid traps when I'm proposing how to approach the standards. So there could be like blueprints or guides and checkpoints how to deal with standards in the EU proposal. I think that would be very good for my experience. But no, I didn't have that. But it would have been a better experience if I had that. Then we also talked about what I was missing in this list, and of course it was also something Nick said, that I used HSbooster, and of course it's this access to mentors is I think that was incredible in our experience, because now you had somebody to you know, that could challenge you. You could provide what I suggested as input to the work group I eventually joined in IEC in my case, and then I could use the mentor provided through HSbooster as one to kind of sharpen my message, and also increase my confidence when I actually went to these meetings to present our contribution. So so if I would have a best practice, is actually this HSbooster service should be like a permanent service for people like myself and EU projects. And yeah, I think that's
Okay, so you're referring to the best practice of having a mentor, someone that helps you a bit to navigate through standardization, especially for newcomers.
exactly. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we also see from the work we do in small business standards and SMEs that want to go for the first time. They need someone to guide them a bit to understand how they can influence the process.
Yes.
Vilma, I wanted to go a bit to you now. You are working in the construction area, and we also know that you know, the construction area is quite regulated. The construction sector also heavily relies as well on standardization in support of legal requirements. So also considering this specific context of the construction sector, what are the challenges and you know, you face in sectors like yours when you are in research projects, and also if you have any best practices or best ways you can share with us in order to handle them in this area.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, also for the invitation. So, as you said, I've been involved in some of European projects related to development of building products, where our institute covered standardization issue. Such projects are Innovi, Vultoloop, and now HScycle. What is common to all of these projects, they work in recycling and development of new innovative products, which are intended to be used in building sector. So all of them are also on high technology readiness level. This is also an important factor, because then these products are very close to the market. And you already mentioned that construction sector is strictly regulated. So there is construction product regulation, which is in force. This construction product regulation defines what needs to be done before building products are put on the market. And they refer to the standards, how to do this. These standards are published in official journal, and they are so-called harmonized standards. So because they're harmonized with the requirements from CPR, construction product regulation. But okay, not all building products are covered by this harmonized standard, especially in the European project, where we are developing some new or innovative products. And then we need to take another route how we will satisfy the requirements from construction product regulation. This is sometimes using actions from EOTA, this is European Organization for Technical Assessment, or National Attestation of Conformity. So, as you said, and I would also like to stress that building sector is pretty complex, especially for the newcomers in this area. And within this European project, we help with instruction or guidelines for every specific products, how to address this issue. For example, from finding existing standards, then which can be used, for example, for testing, then finding national legislation, but also helping with suggestion how to contribute to existing standards, or what is the procedure to initiate the new ones. So this is in a short description how we are involved in these projects, where we cover standardization, and that's it in short.
Thank you very much, Vilma. I want to now move to Signe, who brings the perspective of the standards body to the table, and then I will move to the Q&A, because we have quite a lot of questions in the Q&A panel. So also the panelists can also start having a quick look at those while I ask Signe a question. As I said, you know, you are coming from the standards bodies. In the Stand4EU, we identify some best practices. You see them here in the ranking, but from your perspective, how practically can we implement some of these best practices? There are some here that when we look, for example, at the voluntary character of standardization, normally are volunteers, they are not paid to contribute, that might seem a bit difficult to implement. So like paying for standardization projects. We also see that there are some best practices that are basically giving a hint to trying to make the process maybe a bit more efficient or simpler. So can you maybe comment a bit on that? How practical you think it would be to implement some of these best practices? And from your perspective, what do you think are the best ways for research projects to work with standardization?
Thank you very much. And thank you also for inviting me for this very great workshop. I think this is a really interesting topic and also very important. I would say that now you state that some of them are difficult. I would say they are all difficult. They're not impossible, but they do require a collaborative effort if we are to be successful. If you look at just the top 3 here, you can see, for example, increased awareness. That would often be, for example, the standardization bodies that help increase awareness. If you take a look at number 2, funding and resources, that would often come from policymakers, the commission, or organizations. And the third one, in regard to academia, that of course comes from universities and schools. So just in the top 3 here, we have several different stakeholders, and we need those to collaborate if we are to be successful in any way. Earlier on, Lindsay talked a little bit also about culture. I think we do need a culture change, not just at the universities where they need to engage more in standardization, but also, for example, us as standardization bodies. We need to be even better, I would say, at including research and innovation when we do develop standards. So culture change is definitely a key. I think also some stakeholders that we haven't mentioned here that are quite important are, for example, the research offices and the technology transfer centers, because we also need those on board. So as you can hear, there are many different stakeholders that really need to get together in events like this or other events so that we can collaborate on actually making this a reality. And for some practical advice for projects, I would say that first of all, what needs to be done if you are in a project or if you are, for example, making a proposal, is you need to define what is your standardization strategy. If you, like mentioned by Morten, are not yet so much aware of how to do this, I can point you toward the standardization orientation tool, also mentioned in the chat, that's developed by HSbooster.eu. Here we have attempted at least to give some advice on what could be a standardization strategy, depending, for example, on the technology readiness level of your project. So you kind of can estimate in what direction can you go standardization-wise for your project. We would also, in the future, we are still working on the tool, but we will also put even more links in there. So, for example, if you are unsure what is the Stand Workshop Agreement, how do we develop it, then there will be a link towards how you can actually do this in practical terms. And the reason why I mentioned this standardization strategy, because that's really the beginning, I would say. And for example, nanomeasurements, we heard a little bit about that also. But what actually we haven't talked about is that Danish Standards, we're actually a partner in the sister project called HSbooster. So that means that we have two different projects here. They're funded under the same core. One of them has taken the strategy of getting in touch with HSbooster and are now developing a Stand Workshop Agreement. And HSbooster, which we are a partner in, we are developing a technical specification. So that means that there is not, I would say, one end goal in regards to standardization. You need to figure out what is best for that particular project, so you know what direction and what steps should you take in order to be successful in getting more impact by using standardization as a tool. And then one final thing I would also point to is that there are lots and lots of tools out there. So if some of you listening out there say, oh, we don't know where to begin, then, for example, take a look at elements such as HSbooster.eu. You can take a look at StandICT. There's also actually this afternoon an event called Putting Science into Standardization, where we take completely new areas. This is a collaboration with the JRC of the Commission, so Joint Research Center, where we take a look at completely new topics that have not been standardized so much, and figure out what do we do standardization-wise with this topic and have a discussion on that. So worry not, there are lots of tools out there that you can use, and I hope that everyone listening will also engage in this collaborative effort that we need in order to be successful.
Thank you, Signe. I think a lot of things, I took notes, a lot of things that you highlighted and that are, I would say, good advice to, to projects as well. So I would like now to have a bit of a look to the questions that we have in the panel. I will start with you, Signe, because there is a question as well regarding writing standards and how we can encourage more countries to participate through the national standards bodies, trade associations, companies. You were mentioning yourself that we need to collaborate between different stakeholders. So do you have maybe a few ideas of how can we address this point and ensure that we have more experts, more countries as well participating in standardization?
Yes, I will start first with societal stakeholders such as research and innovation. And here I would like to stress that if any of you are making proposals right now, do keep in mind that standardization activities are eligible in Horizon projects. So that means that, for example, if you are expecting that you would like to contribute to standardization, do write it in your proposal, because then you'll be able to get your hours and any fees covered by the Horizon project. So that's, of course, one way. The other way, I would again go to the first point in regard to best practices is awareness. Basically, a lot of people are not aware that standardization activities are going on in their areas. And here I believe that we do need more specific and sector-specific webinars or workshops where we, for example, engage between the standardization bodies and the committees and the Commission also to explain what are the possibilities for you. Also, what are the standardization activities going on right now? because we also have to keep in mind that we don't always have to start new standardization activities. Oftentimes there's something going on already where we could really use the input from research and innovation. A very concrete example is, for example, in regard to recyclability of plastics. Here there has been, and still is, a lot of standardization going on right now. And here we have some projects and some innovators that are contributing to developing these standards, because we do need to make sure that these standards are fit for the future. So that means that we want to make sure that all the innovative solutions that are being worked on out there in research innovation are also included in the standards, so that they are fit for purpose also for the future. And when it comes to countries, I would say that's a bit more difficult, because I can only represent Denmark for that. But again, I would say if you are making proposals, then you are able to put this in there as something that's eligible. And in that way, maybe you can have different countries represented here. Again, very short, concrete example is that, going back to plastics, we were in a project called Pull Inspire, which has ended. And at that point, it was about plastic. And at that time, Turkey did not have a MIRA committee, which is the National Committee of Standardization on Plastic Recyclability. But due to this project, we were able to help them establish this in Turkey, so that they now also have a national committee on plastic recyclability. So I think there's really a lot to do if we have research, innovation, and standardization collaborate on this.
Thank you very much, Signe. I was going to go to you, Lindsay, but I see that you raised your hand. That's good. So I guess you want to comment on this.
Sorry about that. I just want to reinforce what Signe just said. When talking with national governments, there was a recent report covering the last 20 years of growth of productivity in the Nordic countries, so including Denmark, Netherlands, and so on. And about a quarter of all of the growth of labor productivity was factored in due to standardization. That is, if you took out the influence of standardization, the labor productivity would be down by a quarter in the last 20 years. So I'm not talking about oil or natural resources. I'm talking about what people achieve. So this is something which all of the national governments should factor in when they think about supporting, not just for the future of the planet, but also for the future of their electorate and their economy. And the second thing I wanted to bring in is quite different, but a huge problem for all of us. We've got so many different committees and standards and research outputs and research projects that we have a huge problem to keep up. Now, I've been looking recently at the same situation in health research. And if you look at the explosion in genomics and in personalized medicine and so on and so forth, any research doctor has thousands of articles that they could or should be reading every year just on their narrow area. So the health community have helped to solve that by getting together, let me call them collaborative efforts, to summarize what is happening in a particular area and pick out what seems to be the best practice. And of course, it has to be updated quite regularly, but by having recognized experts discussing and getting a common view, or at least a common set of priorities, you can make life a lot easier for the other half of the people, so they have more time to do actual standards. So I really would recommend all of us look how to solve this information explosion and committee explosion issue. And I know the Commission helps with the calls where people are joined together. But I think a more concentrated effort on summarizing things so not everybody has to do everything from scratch would be great.
I agree with you, Lindsay. This is part of our experience as well with SMEs. The information is there, but there is so much that it's difficult sometimes to condense and to really see what is the important, or to find your way through this information. Signe, 1 second, because I want to also deal with the other questions in the Q&A, but I guess it's a reply or a comment on this one.
Yes, and also I just want to quickly say, I'll do this shortly. There is also a question about the informal standardization in the chat. Just to say that I think there is the need for all different types of standardization, not just formal standardization. There's also a lot of talk about here timing and making sure that we link research innovation projects and the timing of standardization. The biggest force of formal standardization is that we do have this process and we do have consensus, and that means that it takes a bit of time. So that means that we will, I would say, probably never be able to make a standard in a couple of months. It's just not realistic. We do have to have these processes, but there is such a thing as the perfect timing, and that's what I just want to stress. For example, right now, there are a lot of research and innovation projects on the digital product passport. And there's also a standardization request from the Commission asking for standards for the digital product passport. So what we also need to do is we need to look at where are the standardization needs right now and match these with the relevant research innovation projects, so we make sure that they contribute at the right time and at the right place.
And there is a just Sense-Elect technical committee on the digital product passport just created. So indeed,
yes,
it's the right
first
moment.
meeting is on Monday.
Exactly. It's the right moment to look at that area. I also want to have a look at the first question that was in the chat, which I think is an interesting one as well. And I don't know, maybe Georgios, because you mentioned you are as well in your project with some big companies. It's mentioned there that, how you can deal with, large projects where you also have big companies involved. And in that case, SMEs struggle to contributing with standardization and resources. Big companies, the challenge they might have is that they have people dedicated to standardization, people dedicated to research and innovation, and they might not even talk to each other. So the first question had to do about how do we deal with that challenge. Anyone has any thoughts on that? I thought, Georgios, that maybe you have a thought, but maybe not, since you said you were also in your research project with big companies. But if anybody else from the panel wants to comment as well.
If I may, of course, it depends on the topic for standardization, because in our case, we have something which is, let's say, more cyber, more digital to standardize. If you have something physical, maybe then it is much more specific. We have collaboration within the project with Thalys, Keysight, organic electronic companies, BASF, different domains, ANSYS as well. But the key is that we are seeking for something cyber, and the second not benefit, but let's say that it is an advantage that already we knew most of the consortium partners from the past. So we had participated in common clusters like European Materials Characterization Council and European Materials Modeling Council. So we have been gathering the needs for standardization all this way long from 2016, when the activity in these clusters was already initiated and continued all these years. So I mean that there was a momentum, there was a community behind, there were identified common standardization needs, and this networking opportunity was what facilitated to bring these experts together. So in our case, we didn't have any issues from big stakeholders participating in standardization. But this might not be the thing when you have something which is more physical, as I said in the beginning.
Lindsay?
Yes, thank you. I agree that cyber side is more flexible, but also I found that when people are acting as a bridge between two communities, they can take their knowledge from one area to the new one without what can I say, needing to condense it and summarize it and republish it, etc. So really, I would recommend as a easy first step, inviting experts across groups. So Sensenlec and ETSI do that on some of the work on AI. We've got a good collaboration. And there's many cases where research projects have, let me say, visited to different ETSI groups to get an idea what's happening. Usually they go away and don't come back, but it's still the simplest way to transfer an impression of what the other side are doing. So for research projects, I'm sure if there was an invitation from either metamaterials side or from other places, just broadcast to maybe some contact points in the STOs, that you would get at least a few chairs or technical persons coming along to hear what you're up to and seeing how it could, what can I say, fit into or bolt onto existing work. But as we all know, it's hard to start that communication process. That might be an easy way.
Mm. And as I guess as well, I'm thinking about Ivana and this best practice about integrating standardization into curricula. As well, if we would have more knowledge of the importance of standardization, I guess, among researchers, among different functions in a company, I guess those bridges to go and talk with your standardization colleagues might be as well easier to be established, I guess. We are running out of time. I see. This is a really interesting discussion, and actually had more questions. But I think for the sake of time, we might need to conclude. But I would like to conclude just giving each of the panelists the opportunity to, in 1 minute, let us know what would be your main takeaway or the best practice, if you can only choose one, that you would put forward in order to bridge this gap between research and standardization. So let's start with Ivana.
Yes, only 1 minute. So
yes, one.
Yes. What the main point is, education and training is important, but cannot solve everything. But things are changing. So I have to say that we have new European Commission initiative related to higher education. Edu for Stand4EU has a kickoff in January. So research consortium of universities and stakeholder representatives are joined together to raise issue and to share experience and experience in building standardization curricula in higher education.
Thank you, Ivana. So education training is important. We are working on that, but it won't solve everything. So, Signe, from your side.
I would say actually kind of similar. The benefits of linking research, innovation, and standardization is still a quite well-kept secret. We need to make sure that there's more awareness of this. And just listening in today, we are name-dropping a lot of projects and a lot of initiatives. But I would say if any of you out there would like to know more, then just contact, see if you can point right there, one of these two initiatives. Because then we can help point you in the right direction. So that would be my key takeaway. Just get in contact with us, and we will help you out.
Thank you, Signe. Vilma, what is the main takeaway or best practice from your side?
Yeah, similar that from our previous speakers, I would say that it's very important that involve more people in the process, that in this way that we link all stakeholders. It also means that I would support the idea of making standardization part of academic curriculum, because I think that by being familiar with the procedures and requirements, technical as well as legislational, means that you have quite a big advantage in research because your goals are more clearly identified. You know from the beginning which parameters are important that you might not think about without having this knowledge. And in the end of the day, you're faster on the market, but it's important for the company as well as European economy. Thanks.
Thank you, Vilma. I think a very important message as well. Morten, what would be your main key takeaway or best practice?
I think I will go for the awareness, and I think it would be nice if already at the proposal stage, when you enter your Horizon Europe, you actually get almost a link to, if you consider to do any standard work, click here and you get your necessary information. Yeah,
Good. Thank you. Georgios.
Sorry for that. So I would say that one identified pain is the accessibility to standards. So I am involved in academia here in the University of Athens. In order to access standards, you need to pay, or you might have, as engineer, I am engineer, limited access for limited time per month. So this does not facilitate to uptake standards, identify the weaknesses, identify the needs for standardization. Accessibility is quite important, and of course, if you can in your activities standardize and have an outcome of workshop agreements, having this open by design maybe it is the most important, so that you have in a community which is engaged, has access to the information.
Thank you, Georgios. Thanks. And Lindsay?
Okay, all of the above. And plus one more, I think that standards people and research people don't explain easily what they're doing. So what we should have is, for every standard, a nice abstract, and for every research project, a nice list of expected outcomes. And usually what we get is some not very easily understood 10 pages. So I would really emphasize going to a more Wikipedia oriented result, where people can get the first impression and then drill down, and that would really raise our awareness. And I've been saying this for years inside ETSI, and mostly the technical people don't want to dumb down, if I can be like that, they're highly specific standards. But if you don't advertise, you won't get the awareness.
Yeah, and I think that there is a nice final advice from the panelists. I would like to thank you all for such an engaged discussion. I think we could have been discussing for half an hour more, at least I could have. And I think we have also learned a lot about how, you know, research and standardization can work a bit better together. So I would just like to conclude by reminding all the people that are with us today, first of all, the HSbooster services. It was mentioned before. The project is running until September. If you need support, if you don't know how to start, if you need targeted support, because that's offered, that is available. So you can contact the HSbooster. They have funds available, so don't hesitate to do that. I think I also wanted to highlight that from the Stand4EU side, we have launched a platform that is there actually to try to exchange examples of how research and innovation projects have contributed to standardization. What are the obstacles? What are the possible remedies? This has been launched very quite recently, but this portal, you can access it through the website and engage with it and contribute with it as well to with your experience. So I also would encourage the panelists, if you have any experiences to share, go to the portal, share them. It's trying to be a platform in order to have this facilitate this exchange. And finally, I also wanted to remind you, and the link has been shared in the chat, that there is still the European standardization panel ongoing. This is a survey. Please disseminate, contribute to it, and will be open until the end of the year. So I think with these words, I would like to thank you all for your active participation. And yes, the presentations and the recording will be available soon as well. And in any case, be assured all your contributions will contribute as well for the recommendations of both projects, Stand4EU and HSbooster in the future. So thank you all for your participation, and bye-bye.